Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am here flying solo. Hopefully, everyone had a good holiday weekend, extended weekend. I know that everyone here at SCU has, as well, as noted by our absence throughout the week. I said maybe we would get one show in this week, and just to kind of piggyback off of something myself and Brian were talking about in the last show, I'm going to bring up the ESPN rankings from ESPN Plus, the ESPN Insider site, ranking the NFL rosters for the 2023 season. It says strengths and weaknesses, and it was very interesting when talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, next week we should be back to a more regular schedule, and of course it is that dead period after the NFL draft. You get through June, part of July, until we get the training camp, and there isn't like a whole lot to talk about. You got to manufacture things to speak of, just like this. And I know someone had asked about doing a deep dive on each of the AFC North teams. I'm going to get one of my colleagues to come on to help with those. I think we'll split those up into different shows, but this is kind of almost like a look or a window into some of that, some of my thoughts on not only just the AFC North teams, which is what I did an article on for SteelCityUnderground.com just the other day, but we'll look at the NFL. We'll look at this is the entire NFL ranking, and also take a look at the AFC and see where the Steelers kind of break down or fall into these different categories here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up, let's see, I got to bring up this article first, and this is from ESPN, and just to kind of give you a look at this. Now, this is what you would call some premium content, so I can't give away all of this for free and just scroll down the page. That'd be pretty crappy of me as a professional here myself that wouldn't want my own stuff ripped off. So I'll just let you know that this starts off with Mike Clay and Seth Walder. This is about maybe a week ago. They went into this whole spiel, and it says, with the NFL in a quiet period between post-draft minicamps and preseason training camp, they know. They're saying they're acknowledging the same thing. It's time to reassess how all 32 teams are built and maintain their rosters this offseason. Which franchises retain their high-end talent from last season, added impact contributors to free agency, and found potential starters in April's draft, and which teams are in worse shape than 2022. So Mike Clay and Seth Walder, they get together, they combined rankings to come up with their list of the league's best and worst, and they rated each roster based on talent, age, and production of the players, not taking into account how some coaching staffs could squeeze the best out of their talent. They definitely didn't take account into that with Mike Tomlin. Let me tell you, Mike Tomlin beat Tom Brady with two guys off the street playing in the secondary last year. So we'll just say that. I know it wasn't like, Tom Brady wasn't, maybe GOAT Tom Brady last year, and Tampa Bay wasn't exactly what they were, but you get the idea, right? Clay's rankings are powered by his 2023 projections, which include detailed stats and score predictions for every team. And just to kind of lend you on to that, there's a huge, this is the projection guide. This is massive. It goes just forever. So let's take a look and see what we got for the Steelers here. This is going to give anyone, this is just a, we didn't have to. I was going to give a forewarning if you're a little light sensitive or that'll give you a little motion sickness here. Let's take a look and see if I could bump this up a little bigger on screen for everyone. Big PDF file. This is available to anyone. By any chance, if you happen to get ESPN Plus to stream, or you have it as part of the Disney Plus bundle, you could find this. There is a link over earlier this week in my article from SteelCityUnderground.com. And basically they have, he has some projections. He's 2023 projections. Kenny Pickett, about 3,400 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 12 picks. He thinks Mitch Trubisky is going to get in and probably play about 2 games here, it says. 70 pass attempts, 443 yards. I think that's a lofty expectation for Mitch Trubisky. 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The guy doesn't throw interceptions, though. That's the thing. Like, the 2 touchdown thing is also like probably, 1 per game there if he plays in 2 games. 443 yards, though, it's probably more like, how I would say 243. Mitch is the king of dinking and dunking there. He's got Kenny down for 3 rushing touchdowns. You take a look at some of the other projections. Doesn't have Najee Harris as a 1,000-yard rusher either. Only 6 touchdowns. That's because he has Jalen Warren with about a third of the load. I mean, this stuff is pretty interesting to get into when you're talking about the dead period that we're in right now. So even has Anthony McFarland making this team. Deontay Johnson. Let's see where Deontay's at. No 1,000-yard receivers, despite Kenny throwing for 3,400 yards. I think that's going to be a little bit off. And this is kind of where this falls off a cliff, because he has George Pickens with 797 yards, 4 touchdown projection model here. And George Pickens was doing better than that during his rookie season. I mean, Deontay Johnson did lead the team in receiving, but Deontay had 882. George already had 801 and 4 touchdowns last season. So he actually thinks George Pickens is going to regress? That just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, not by much, but he has Allen Robinson in the 4 touchdown range. You get down to Pat Freiermuth, 643 off 60 catches, 4 touchdowns. No 100-yard receptions for any, or 100 receptions for the season for any of these projections. TJ Watt, he has at 10.6 sacks. Alex Highsmith at 10.5. It gives you an idea of, I don't know if it's like this AI phase or fad that everybody's into, but the Steelers, between their defensive line and outside linebackers, what's he have? 44 total sacks for this team. I'm sorry, that's just, they're going to have 50 sacks. It's a 17-game season now. This is just ridiculous. Anything else, I mean, you could pretty much just take a gander at. But I honestly, between some combination of Highsmith and Hayward, there should be 20 sacks there alone. And I would think that TJ's in the 15 to 20 range. That should get you to at least 35 to 40 between 3 players. There'll be other exotic schemes and stuff like that, but the Steelers have always been among the top players at getting after the quarterback. And that's kind of where I'm at, not only with the draft and free agency and et cetera, but they have the Steelers ranked somewhere, let's see here, near the bottom. Of course, we get back to this article. They have the Steelers ranked 14th, and this would be the worst among the AFC North teams. So this actually means they have the Bengals, Ravens, and Browns all ranked higher than 14. Now, 14, I'm not too bent out of shape about this. I could sympathize with and understand change and the unknown. And Kenny Pickett's a second-year quarterback. Still a lot of unknown. Will be his first full season as a starter. The Steelers' offense, Deontay Johnson didn't have a touchdown last year. This team didn't make the playoffs in general. Will George Pickens take that next leap? Is Allen Robinson washed? Pat Freiermuth take that next leap? Does Najee Harris? I think Najee Harris is still a very steady guy, and I think a lot of people were sleeping on him last year per that foot injury. So this is just, they're talking about TJ Watt when he's not healthy. They added Marcus Golden. It's like he gets a little bit of a nod here. They might mention DeMarvin Leal and Nick Herbig, but they failed to mention like Keanu Benton. They failed to mention that they brought back Larry Ogunjobi. There's absolutely zero mention here of Cameron Hayward or Micah Fitzpatrick, for that matter, which we discussed just briefly on the last show. The off-ball linebacker, they say it's real weak. I understand the Steelers have signed and brought in a bunch of people. They're always trying to fix this. This is an NFL-wide thing. They're just trying to defend the pass. Got to have guys that are big enough and be able to stop the run, too, which was a Devin Bush problem. It was kind of like getting manhandled, especially. I still think that knee injury did not do him any favors. The X factor on this list is George Pickens, and it says that his 99 catch score fueled a successful rookie year and gave Pickens elite upside if he could develop as a route runner and get open more frequently. He posted a below average 48 open score last year. So they think he's an X factor. Non-starter to no. Nick Herbig, I think that's a non-starter right there. Marcus Golden coming in kind of makes Nick Herbig an afterthought. If he gets in at all, it'll be due to injuries, or there's a situation in the game where he gets a few snaps. Either they're playing a lot of defensive snaps, or the game's well in control, and they're going to see what the young kid has. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the guys that doesn't even get a helmet on game days, should the team keep 9 or 10 linebackers. So of the names you need to know, you take a look at this whole list, And you've got the offense: Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, Pat Freiermuth. They put Connor Hayward in here as the second tight end over Zach Gentry and or Darnell Washington, which I'm not exactly. I don't know that Darnell's going to play a lot of snaps, but he has an opportunity to get the helmet more often than Gentry ever did, or some of the other guys. Even Jesse James is a rookie as a tight end 3. Washington's going to be out there because he's going to be used as a blocker, I think, and he's got some familiarity when they put. If and when, and I think you got to have the same offensive line unit together for the whole season. So that means that Broderick Jones should be the week 1 starter, the 14th overall pick in the NFL draft, the Steelers' first-round draft pick, if you happen to forget. That was a pretty big deal redoing this offensive line. So I know Chuks Okorafor has been there for a while, but he's always been part of this kind of looking ahead type deal to have a younger body. He's on the right tackle side. James Daniels, Isaac Seumalo, your 2 guards, and Mason Cole, all free agents within the last 1 or 2 seasons, and all, in Daniels and Seumalo's cases, the best guards available in free agency. So when you're evaluating these rosters, it just, I'm going to go through who all ranked ahead of 14, obviously. And there's some teams behind, like the Jacksonville Jaguars are the next one on this list. I think the Jaguars are pretty loaded overall. But let's finish off with the Steelers here first before we jump the gun. Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, Armon Watts is not your starter. And not your starting nose tackle. That's going to be Keanu Benton, unless for some reason Keanu cannot handle it. He'll be in a dogfight, of course, with some other guys such as Montravius Adams, Braden Fehoko. You're going to look that up over at SteelCityUnderground.com. Mark did a good job with the kicking off our training camp battles articles just the other day. So check that out. He talks about the defensive line. You've got your outside or edge rushers. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Landon Roberts, and Cole Holcomb are in the middle. I think that's a very solid front 7, if I should say so. And then you've got Patrick Peterson. I don't disagree with them marking Levi Wallace in here as a starter. I kind of think that Joey Porter will be eased in. Shannon Sullivan as your slot corner. And then you got Micah Fitzpatrick and DeMonte Casey. I don't think Casey has much of a drop-off from Terrell Edmonds, so I'm not so bent out of shape about that. I would have liked Edmonds a little younger, I think. Casey may have a little more splash to his game, though. So we'll see what the risk reward is there. But to not mention Minka, you got Minka, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. Those guys are all like in perpetuity for consideration of all pro conversation. And it seems like they just weren't considered whatsoever when looking at this list. So, of course, the list starts off with the Kansas City Chiefs as the number 1. And of course, I mean, how are you going to be against a team that's been in 4 straight AFC title games, has won recent Super Bowls? I don't know. Andy Reid is the coach, but they said the coach isn't like a factor in this. So their roster, Mahomes, like, he's the bell curve on everything, but Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Sky, I like Sky Moore. You still got Travis Kelce. He's a GOAT. Creed Humphrey is in the middle of this offense. You got Joe Thuney as one of the guards. Okay, offensive line's pretty solid. Chris Jones on the defensive side of things. George Karlaftis, young, good player. And some of this, I mean, it's they've gotten by because of a very high-powered offense and players who fit like a round peg in a round hole. Isaac Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, but how much longer are you going to be able to ride with this? We're talking about rosters and talent, and they got the Eagles, defending Super Bowl champions. Now the Eagles got a little bit ravaged, of course. Jalen Hurts, they got DeAndre Swift in the backfield, Rashad Penny coming over as well. I mean, they're going to run the ball this year. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Dallas Goedert, and you got all the usual names on the offensive line. They should be number 1 here. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson. You still got Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, your other linebackers, Nicholas Morrow, Nakobe Dean, I kind of like him too. Darius Slay, James Bradbury. Remember Slay was going to leave, and then they still have Bradbury there. Terrell Edmonds, now Reed Blankenship. Okay, secondary could be This roster's like way better than the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, on paper. And that's where you get into all of this. You got the Buffalo Bills next. Josh Allen, of course. James Cook's going to be your running back. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, Dawson Knox. He just got a pretty good contract. But on the offensive side of things, they've been able to get it done. It's really like Allen and Diggs. They haven't been like really affluent at running the football in recent years, and that hasn't really hurt them. They got Leonard Floyd over here now with Von Miller, Ed Oliver making some bank. You got Matt Milano still. They did lose. Oh man, talk about I was going to say Terrell Edmonds, but Tremaine Edmonds. They lose him in free agency, so they're getting beat up a little bit. Tre'Davious White is a solid corner when healthy. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are still there as your safety. So that's a very good group. And then you go down and you got the Miami Dolphins, and their defense is elite on paper. There's a lot more said here than it was about the Steelers. And I mean, do you trust Tua? Do you trust Jeff Wilson Jr.? You're supposed to not take coaching into this and into this. Does Mike McDonald end up making these guys the way that they are, or So Tyreek Hill, he's got some legal troubles now. Jalen Waddle, Durham Smythe. They don't have Mike Gesicki anymore. Offensive line is pretty solid. I won't complain about them. The defensive side of things, I mean, David Long Jr. is one of the linebackers. Jerome Baker. I don't know. They got Jalen Ramsey. How do we feel about Jalen Ramsey? Xavier Howard. That could be a good pair, or that could just be. I don't know how I ever feel about Ramsey. It's very difficult for me to gauge if he's really that good or if he just talks a good game sometimes. Definitely among the better corners in the league, but to make this roster elite is interesting. Now, the Bengals is the first AFC North team that's on here. Back-to-back AFC title games. Joe Burrow, he's obviously etching himself into getting a big contract and among the elite players at the position in the league. I think he's a stone-cold killer as far as being a quarterback, and I'm on record saying years ago when he was drafted that he was going to be a problem for the Steelers for well over a decade, and here you are. Joe Mixon, hot and cold. He could be a really great player at times and a good asset, and at times you saw Samjay Perine just do the same thing. So it really skews whether or not it's the guy that's in the jersey or part of the system. Excuse me. Going solo here. Got to get some coffee. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, all elite, definitely. Tight ends, Irv Smith and Drew Sample, not elite at all. They added Orlando Brown along with Cordell Volson. I'm not the biggest fan of Cordell Volson. Ted Karras, Alex Kappa was signed the year before. Jonah Williams still listed on here. So, offensively, I get offended sometimes. It's offensive to look at this. But the Bengals, that high for the Bengals on this team? That's kind of interested in. I mean, they still got Lyle Collins, and we know that didn't really work out, just as we said it might not. And we looked defensively for this team. And Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Trey Hendrickson. You've got Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson in the middle there. And let's see, Miles Murphy's being added to this. Chidobe Awuzie coming off injury. Cam Taylor-Britt, Mike Hilton, Dax Hill, and Nick Scott. So the secondary without Von Bell and without Jesse Bates, it's going to be a change for the Bengals. They still got enough firepower on offense. Their window, I think, is this year, and then it's going to close up a little bit. Dallas Cowboys come in next. And Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard's there now. No more Zeke. CeeDee Lamb, I like Brandon Cooks. He produces no matter where he goes. So it's kind of an interesting group. The offensive line is, come back to Jerry Jones always kind of puts an emphasis on that. And they've had to rebuild due to injuries and whatnot as well. They added Mazzie Smith in the draft here. Micah Parsons, of course, and DeMarcus Lawrence. They cause a lot of problems. Leighton Vander Esch is still there. I thought maybe the Steelers could go after him. Trayvon Diggs. Is he a good corner, or is he just lucky? Stephon Gilmore, how much does he have left in the tank? They got a trio of safeties here listed: Donovan Wilson, Jaron Kearse, and Malik Hooker. So, I mean, I'm not going to take anything against Cowboys. They're not an AFC. What's interesting is like you got two, they're listed as sixth, and you got the Eagles listed as second. So that is going to be a competitive division. You got the Bills and the Dolphins both in the same division, listed 3 and 4. I'm not sure I'd have the Dolphins this high. And then they got the Chargers listed next. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, and so you could use some of your imagination here because I want to really focus on the AFC North teams. But I'm sorry, the Chargers still, they're incapable of getting things done. And it says here, edge rusher Joey Bosa was limited to 2 games. This is going to be their strength. Khalil Mack. I mean, no, sorry. I got to look at these other teams and see. Am I going to say they're necessarily better than the Steelers? Maybe on paper. Maybe on paper. I mean, maybe more proven commodities with, Herbert, Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all those guys. I won't get a major argument from me. That offensive line, little mid. That defense, I mean, you got Bosa and Mack, and then what? Eric Kendricks. I mean, Asante Samuel Jr. is pretty good. Derwin James is really great, but guy, he's had his health issues in the past too. 49ers are always an interesting group too. They're ranked 8th with Brock Purdy penciled in. Will he be? They play the Steelers week 1. We'll see. Christian McCaffrey, that was just ridiculous. I mean, him and Kyle Juszczyk are a neat little group in that backfield. I think that's just the type of system that would really benefit McCaffrey too. You just can't keep pounding him like the Panthers did, and he is a receiving threat. So, I mean, it's going to really test the Steelers that first week. Deebo Samuel, he's saying that last season wasn't the way he would have liked it. Brandon Ayuk was surprisingly really good last year. George Kittle, of course, when healthy, great tight end. Trent Williams anchoring that left tackle spot. They've had some fluctuation here with their offensive line, but then on the defense, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Javon Kinlaw. Then you have Nick Bosa, Drake Jackson on the opposite side of Bosa, Fred Warner as your linebacker, Travarius Ward, Talona Hufanga, and Tayshaun Gibson still getting it done too. But Hufanga, what a find he's been too. So this 49ers team might actually be someone I'd put a little higher. But right after it, now we get to the AFC North, and you got number 9. You've got the Cleveland Browns. And sorry, not sorry. I mean, you're going to say Ethan Posick. I liked Ethan Posick in the last year's free agent draft class. I kind of wanted him. Mason Cole was not on my radar. Ethan Posick was on my radar. But now all of a sudden he's elite after they were busy kissing the ring of J.C. Treader, who wasn't brought back, and everything else. Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin, terrific. That's their words, not mine. Terrific pass blockers. Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, solid, okay? Solid offensive line. I'll give them that much. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. Weakest unit is defensive tackle depth. I mean, they added Dalvin Tomlinson. I don't think that's really all that big. I mean, you're still looking at maybe Perion Winfrey sitting here as one of the starters. The X factor being Deshaun Watson, and that's really what I have to really, bitch and complain about here. This is number 9 based on Deshaun Watson is probably a little too generous. I mean, Deshaun Watson played 6 games last season, right? What game did he start with? The Houston Texans. I mean, they beat the Texans, who were like basically the worst team in football, 27-14. Then they lose to the Bengals, and they're not able to put up like any major points, right? 10, 13, 10. They put up 24 on the Commanders. A lot of that had to deal with how many turnovers were in this game. A lot of that. And then only 14 points on the Steelers. I mean, they just weren't able to get anything done. They basically split, I think, 3-3 with Watson as a starter. Yeah, that's correct. And Watson had 7 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I don't see it happening. So, Carson Wentz got picked off 3 times in that game where they actually had 24 points. The Browns did, winning 24-10 against the Commanders, and their points were, a field goal, okay, a nice deep pass to Amari Cooper. So Watson had a trio of passes in this, but all the turnovers. Carson Wentz getting sacked 3 times. He had a 31.4 QB rating. He was 16 of 28 for 143 yards with 3 picks. That is like just about as bad can be. So Browns, I don't know, is this a 6-game sample enough? I mean, we're basing enough off of maybe 6, 8, 10 games for Kenny Pickett. When Deshaun Watson, I mean, I know has a little bit more of a background in playing with a bad Houston Texans team, but that's just I'm sorry, like I'm not buying it. I'm not buying what this team has to sell to be the 9th. I'm not saying the Steelers would be 9th either. I don't know that they're top 10, but I really don't know that the Browns ahead of the Ravens even. And I don't think a whole lot highly of the Ravens, but there's a little bit more proven like brand names. This isn't like the great value stuff here. Okay. So with the Browns, let's take a look at who all they have penciled in here. You've got Deshaun Watson, obviously. Nick Chubb. Okay, Nick Chubb's an elite player at running back position. Amari Cooper. When he's on, he's good, and when he's not, he's not. Elijah Moore, I'm sorry, I'm not sold on. Donovan Peoples-Jones is somebody that just snuck up as a late-round pick. That's been pretty solid. David Njoku, far from elite. Harrison Bryant, a decent pair of tight ends. I talked about the offensive line. They're all right. Dalvin Tomlinson and Jordan Elliott, Myles Garrett, and Zadarius Smith. Prove me wrong on this one. I mean, Garrett is who Garrett is, but the other guys, I'm not sold anymore on Tomlinson or Smith. Could be solid. It's kind of like what I talked about with Ogunjobi being with the Steelers, but at least you have veteran players with experience there. These aren't just guys that are just going to get thrown around, but we'll see what kind of impact they have that's above the line. They have Aranco added here, JOK, Anthony Walker is your linebackers. That's pretty decent. JOK, a little off last year. Expecting some more bigger things maybe from him. Denzel Ward, got to play a full season. And you got Greg Newsome. You don't know if Greg Newsome's going to be anything big. Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill. That secondary really has me wondering with the Cleveland Browns. I don't see it. And part of that defensive line, if anything falls apart right there, that's going to be a very long season for that defense with an offense that if the quarterback doesn't get up to snuff and can put up some big numbers, there's going to be some very it's going to be another very long season, and a lot of people still banging and beating their chest for the Cleveland Browns just don't understand that. They should throw coaching into this. This could be Stefanski on the hot seat. I still think he's the right guy for the job there, but this team is just so they can't help themselves but to continue changing. So we'll see. They're in a very big money pit too if they ever move on from Barry as the GM and try something with a different head coach who has a different system, and you got to try, what are you going to do? You're going to change your defensive schemes again, et cetera, et cetera. So they need a little bit of consistency here. This is really, I think, a make or break year for the Cleveland Browns. New York Jets come in at number 10 just because they threw Aaron Rodgers into this group. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard's there now, McCole Hardman's there, Tyler Conklin's there. We'll see what the offensive line ends up being like. Quentin Williams, Quentin Jefferson, Carl Lawson, CJ Mosley's still there, DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter II, Jordan Whitehead, Adrian Amos. Defense should be pretty solid for the Jets. We'll see how they compete with the rest of that division, Bills, Patriots, and Dolphins, especially since they think the Bills. But this is like practically they're three AFC East teams in the top 10. I don't know. I kind of tend to think, and this is based on rosters, this isn't going to be all teams that make the playoffs. Baltimore Ravens, they come in here at 11. Their strongest unit is tight ends. That's because they have a bazillion of them. Isaiah Likely was a nice pick for them last year, as noted here in the article. They make a big ballyhoo out of Marcus Peters leaving. I don't know that Marcus Peters was ever... I've never settled right on him. Marlon Humphrey, though, is a solid dude. And we'll see between Brandon Stevens, Demarion Williams, and Rock Ya-Sin as to who is going to play opposite there. The wide receiver room, we'll see what kind of impact they have. Do we think this roster is better? Like, this is where I was at with the Steelers. When you don't mention Minka Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward, but you mention like Dalvin Tomlinson, I understand you're mentioning free agents or people that are picked up. The Steelers defense is light years ahead of both of these groups, and probably even the Bengals group, to be completely honest. With the Ravens, you got Michael Pierce, Justin Madubuike, Broderick Washington, Tyus Bowser, Odafe Owe, Roquan Smith, solid player. He had to come in because Patrick Queen is just kind of mid, maybe not panned out. The rest of this secondary, you'll have Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton as your safeties with the aforementioned corners. This should be a decently solid group. This is a better group than the Cleveland Browns. When you put them head to head, I don't know if J.K. Dobbins is better than Nick Chubb. The wide receiver group here with Beckham's like in his 30s now. What is he, like 31? It's about to fall off the face of the planet. Zay Flowers is unknown. Bateman's still an unknown. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. And then the offensive line, Ronnie Stanley, Ben Cleveland, Tyler Linderbaum, Kevin Zeitler, and Morgan Moses. I mean, that's a pretty good offensive line group too. So I'm kind of surprised with how much everyone was all on the Lamar Jackson getting paid train, that they just they kind of like poo-pooed all over like the offensive line in this ranking in the wide receivers. What you get, the risks and the unknowns what Clay and Walder talk about here, risks and unknowns, and it is. But I don't think the Browns have any fewer risks. I mean, obviously, the most complete, or to date, the most complete roster has been the Bengals, and that's because of the draft picks and everything working out. They have money for free agency. The Browns should be able to do the same thing, but they spent it all on Watson. They had some high picks with Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett that finally panned out, and that's helped kind of like give them a baseline. But since 1989, the Steelers have finished ahead of the Browns every single year. AFC Central, AFC North, don't matter how many teams were in the Central. Used to have Houston Oilers, used to have the Jacksonville Jaguars mixed in there. It doesn't matter. Whether those teams were good or great, along with the Bengals, then the Browns became the Ravens. They bring the Browns back. Browns still cannot finish ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers in a season. I still don't think that's going to happen this year, but how do the Steelers really compare stacked up with these other rosters? I think it's pretty competitive. I'm not sure if I want to say that they have a better offensive line group than maybe the Bengals. I'm like still not sold on what the Bengals have done. Ravens, they've got what they've got. We're not talking about coaching, but a new offensive coordinator that could be problematic in the whole scheme of things. You've got Cleveland Browns, of course, solid offensive line. You look at the running backs across the board. Najee up against Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb. I'd probably give Chubb the advantage there. Dobbins wasn't a 1,000-yard rusher last year. I don't know if he's still the same player as he was pre-injury. So that becomes a little problematic in the whole grand scheme of things, too, when you're comparing that. The wide receiver rooms, I could see where you're saying that with the Steelers. Definitely not better than the Bengals trio with Chase and Higgins and Boyd. That group's fire. But the Browns look like they're kind of a hot mess, and the Ravens can be a hot mess, too. So I get where they're coming from with this, but the Steelers have a better defense. Kenny Pickett, no less of an unknown than maybe what you're going to get with Deshaun Watson with the Cleveland Browns. These things are very subjective, and I try and look at this. And, of course, the other two teams that are ahead of the Steelers in this group, Seattle Seahawks, their wide receivers are just so good. I mean, Geno Smith, they're going to have Kenneth Walker was good last year as a running back. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and then adding Jackson Smith and Jigba, Noah Fant in that trade for Russell Wilson. They brought in Charles Cross last year on the offensive line. Their offensive line still maybe a little work in progress. They're still trying to get their defense all the way up to snuff. They brought Bobby Wagner back. So, I mean, that's a really, really intriguing group there. Jamal Adams, not quite on the Minkah Fitzpatrick kind of level of radar. So this is one I kind of have a problem with. Like, the wide receivers are like elite. But you can't tell me across the board Geno Smith is definitely better than Kenny Pickett. Kenneth Walker's definitely better than Najee Harris. Noah Fant's better than Pat Freiermuth. Any of the offensive linemen there, put them up against what the Steelers got there. And the same thing with the defensive side of things. Of course, they got Devin Witherspoon in the draft as well. Denver Broncos is the one that I take a lot of exception with. This team should be like in the 20s. I don't care what anybody is saying here. Russell Wilson, Javonte. I like Javonte Williams a lot. Samaj Perine, I'm sorry. Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick. Like, okay, we're talking about talent on paper. These guys are talented on paper. Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Lloyd Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, Mike McGlinchey is your offensive line. They did not put it together last year. Like, your on paper has to go down here. The defense, I look at this, like Randy Gregory, Josie Jewell. Am I scared of any of these guys? Patrick Surtain II, yeah, pretty solid. A little bit of that's a rub from his dad, but he was good last year. Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson as your safeties. It's not better than the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point. You can make a little bit of a push there. Russell Wilson's a proven commodity, but you saw it. Like, if this were last year and they were putting these pieces together for the first time, this is like top 10 on paper. With Russ Wilson and Javonte Williams, this is top 10 on paper, but this is like middle of the pack or bound in the 20s based on how you saw it all come together. You're not supposed to factor in coaching or if they fix the Nathaniel Hackett problem. Now let's see who's behind the Steelers in this group. So I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I'm actually kind of cool that they have the Steelers at 14. I don't know that the Browns should be higher than the Ravens, and I'm not sure the Browns are necessarily higher than the Steelers. Like, if you wanted to do like 13, 14, something like that, 12, 14, like Browns in the top 10. I don't know. Especially you have Jacksonville. Jacksonville's in the 15 here. They made the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's got it going. Travis Etienne came back from injury, and he's fully healthy. They got Kelvin Ridley that they traded for. It's coming off the suspension. Christian Kirk, who they gave a boatload of money to. Evan Ingram, basically like a career resurgence type deal. A new scenery was good for him. They're adding Anton Harrison, a guy we liked. He's going to be on the penciled in as a starting right tackle now as a rookie. With that offensive line, it was already pretty decent. The defense was already pretty decent with that other Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker added to this team last year. Devin Lloyd, Darius Williams at the corner. I mean, this is a pretty solid team. The Vikings, you look at them on paper, it's really weird. Kirk Cousins and then whatever other guys that could piece around him, but they have him at 16. I guess Justin Jefferson helps with that. They added Jordan Addison. They traded for TJ Hawkinson. So we'll see how this ends up working out for them. On the defensive side, they still have Danielle Hunter, Marcus Davenport. So as you start to go further down these lists, it's like, okay, I can make an argument for this. I think the Lions are going to be pretty stacked. They have them at 17. I mean, Jared Goff might skew that a little bit, but they traded for, or not traded for, but they got Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft. David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been really good. Jamison Williams is somebody they had patience with to develop last year. They picked up or selected Sam Laporta. So it is a very Frank Ragnow's a great center. There's a lot of good things going here. Penei Sewell, like they've had very high draft picks. A lot of things that are going to. I like how Isaiah. By the way, I mentioned this too. If you notice this, Isaiah Buggs is penciled in here. That's not going to happen either. Some of these are just kind of a little off the charts. But Aiden Hutchinson, are you kidding me? A defensive. Rookie of the year, or was he just the overall rookie of the year? I think I had it noted in a recent article. They drafted Jack Campbell, who we like. Alex Anzalone is still in that kind of same type of category. Campbell has a higher ceiling, by the way, obviously. Cam Sutton signed away from the Steelers. CJ Gardner-Johnson is there. They got Kirby Joseph as a safety. This team has a lot of young talent. I think they're turning the corner. The Giants turned the corner last year. They come in at 18th. Always interesting. I think the Steelers roster is better than them. I'm not going to get through the whole thing, but this defensive front seven that they have with Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Ashawn Robinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, Bobby Okereke, and Micah McFadden. That's a hell of a group. That really is a hell of a group. Xavier McKinney and Bobby McCain as your safeties. Saints, Steelers could have very easily been in the same category as the Saints, who now have Derek Carr. They don't really know what might happen here with Alvin Kamara. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, will he ever be healthy enough again? So this is a team that's in constant transition too. And they've kept and lost players over the years. They still have Marshawn Lattimore, Bradley Roby, Marcus May, and Tyrann Mathieu in that secondary. That's a pretty decent secondary. Cam Jordan's still up front, Demario Davis. So they still got pieces there. And on paper, 19th might not be fair for the Saints either, to be completely honest. So we'll bump them up. This is going below the line, below average. New England Patriots are next. Yeah, they've got just a bunch of guys. They got to put some things together. The Raiders come in at 21st. Not feeling it. Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams. Those are all great. Jacoby Myers. Hunter Renfro. Austin Hooper. Just anybody that goes to Cleveland and leaves there just doesn't really push the needle for me at all. And defensively, I know they got a lot of people are in love with Max Crosby, and Chandler Jones is going to be there now. And it's like, no, this just. You got Robert Spillane penciled in as a starter on this list. That doesn't signal to me. Maybe they do belong at 21. I thought maybe even a little lower. The Bears added a whole bunch of they went on a spending spree. Justin Fields got some new weapons around him, like DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, of course, with that trade. I'll keep going. I mean, the Green Bay Packers are just going to fall off a cliff here, unfortunately. And they should have a little bit better of what's going of a collective group, but we'll see what that looks like with Jordan Love. I think that skews this a lot heavily. The Commanders somehow come in a little higher, and let's see what the quarterback situation brings. Will it be Sam Howell? And what's that going to look like with that backfield with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson? You got Terry McLaurin, he's still pretty solid. Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. Defensively, you still got Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat. Jamean Davis is one of the linebackers. They drafted Emmanuel Forbes as one of the corners. So they got some interesting things going. The Panthers jump up to 25, but how much of a jump is that from like 31 or 32 with Bryce Young and Miles Sanders, DJ Chark, Adam Thielen? They piece some things together here. This is a work in progress. The Falcons still are too. They're going to be counting on Desmond Ridder this year. Bijan Robinson drafted. Cordarrelle Patterson still there. Drake London. Kyle Pitts is kind of in purgatory with this team. So 27, the Tampa Bay, how the mighty have fallen. It's going to be Baker Mayfield there throwing to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We'll see how that ends up working out. We're going to see how their offensive line, these teams that are in the Super Bowl and win Super Bowls, they start to get a little ravaged. They still have Levante David and Devin White on this defense. They added Kalijah Cansey from Pitt this year. That's a pretty interesting group. The Tennessee Titans, another group that's kind of fallen down here. Will it be the Ryan Tannehill show? Will it be somebody else? Don't know. Will they still be able to pound the rock with Derrick Henry? Traylon Burks, Nick Westbrook, Ikane, and Kyle Phillips as your wide receivers. Jeffrey Simmons is there on defense, but I look around and it's like, okay, Harold Landry and there's some dudes. Kevin Byard. They're just a step above the Houston Texans. They're not in the very basement here with C.J. Stroud and a bunch of other dudes. The Colts are 30th. Colts, maybe with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Jonathan Taylor, will he be healthy? Can they hand the ball off to him? Who are these wide receivers? Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. Josh Downs might get some touchdowns. We'll see. The Rams, another team where the mighty has fallen. Matt Stafford went from winning a Super Bowl and being with the lowly Lions for so long to now where people think that the Rams are not going to be much of anything. And two NFC West teams here to round out the bottom because the Rams are 31st and the Cardinals are 32nd. And we'll see if Budda Baker is still going to hang around there. Kyler Murray, along with, you may remember, James Conner, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, Zach Ertz. I mean, there's some bones there, but I still think that they're going to be ripping some of the meat off of this skeleton to rebuild this team after firing Cliff Kingsbury. So, folks, that'll do it for us. Curious to hear your thoughts. I won't put the Steelers ahead of some of those teams. I think the Jets and the Dolphins might still be a top 10 team when looking at the whole scope of this, but number 4? I don't know. I don't really feel that. I think the Saints should bump up a little bit, but maybe they're not top 10. Steelers probably aren't top 10. Browns definitely aren't top 10. You could probably put the Ravens. I know Lamar, people say he's a running back, blah, blah, blah. He hasn't been able to stay healthy here or there. I still think that, though, the Ravens are a more dangerous team with them than without them, obviously. And if you were putting coaching into all of this, then I think Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, those guys definitely move the needle, get these teams ranked a little bit higher. Folks, hope you had a wonderful holiday week. Sorry for getting at you a little bit later. I'll try and be here with Flash next week, and we'll find some other interesting topics to talk about. But in the meantime, that'll do it for us. That'll do it for me. Thank you for watching or listening wherever you may be and supporting Steel City Underground. Don't forget to give us a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel or the podcast wherever you might be and whatever platform you might be on. Until next time, my name is Joe Kuzma, and I encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.